Sorry.
So since the packet. Good. This is perfect. Here's the orange, it's made of hay.
But this is the merged, right? I just missed it. All right. Oh, they were nice job last night.
It's essentially different from outside of the one with merged. Good.
Hi, Sarah.
Good. I did. I was trying to see if I could hear, so I had it pressed against my ear, and then
These are 5 presentations.
Because, I mean, tonight's intended to give these plans some legs and figure out sort of how things are going. Yeah. The people out here aren't understanding. But I'm glad you're there.
hey, I actually was speaking about that earlier today.
Tomorrow morning at 12:00.
inside.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Do we need these?
I left mine home. I had it in my hot little hand. And then I said, no.
Yeah, nice chairs too. Very nice.
We have only 3 on the side of it. 4. Hi. So good.
I'm not sure where. I guess John's not going
Thank
to.
you for the offer. Thank you for the offer.
So the mic's are on. How do you want to do this? Can you introduce this? Do you want me to go over the ground rules?
No, I can do that. I could do that.
We asked for 10 minutes. Presentation, 15 minutes. Besides the presentation, 30 minutes.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of had. So process speak for 10 minutes. High level, we will provide 15 minutes questions, then 2 minutes transitions. Come forward the microphone, name and street. Mike, happy to remind you, 2 minutes remaining. And school committee, some comment on questions, but tights for the public.
Well, we did it because Michael was supposed to be
Wrap it up.
soccer,
Yep.
but
I'm just saying, it still wound up helping me.
These are copies of
I got to the
points of this room, but they just can't.
Okay. And Catherine, is it Selma going to present?
one car we
I'm not sure. We'll ask them to they know those. We'll ask them to identify.
Proponent for this? It doesn't say on the handout.
It's,
Is Chris here?
make any noise.
just want to say,
Michael and Cindy, if you could come to the front. Sorry to call you out. Good evening. Is WinCam ready to broadcast? Okay. Want to just count us down? We'll start when you're ready. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the school committee meeting here at the Winchester High School this evening. Tonight's agenda, we have 5 presentations of alternative plans for redistricting. After each presentation, we will take comments or questions from the audience. I want to go over the process so everyone's familiar with this. The presenters, if you could please keep your presentations to 10 minutes. I know that's harder, but it'll allow at least 15 minutes for questions, and then we'll have like a minute or 2 to transition between presenters. As for the questions and answer, I ask that you come forward to the microphone, please. Identify yourself and the street that you live on. If you're not at the microphone, they can't hear you at home, so it's very important that you come to the microphone. Presenters, let me know if you'd like me to give you the 2-minute warning if that's helpful. Otherwise, I'll just let you go through the time that you have. And I just remind the school committee, you can comment and ask questions as well. But tonight, for this evening, let's let the audience ask most of the questions, and we'll have time to discuss this at our next meeting. But please, if you do have a question for clarification, feel free to ask. And then at the end of the evening, we'll have some additional time so we can wrap up. If there are additional comments or questions from the audience at that time, that would be helpful as well. So let's start this evening. We had a lottery, and the winner, or the first presenter this evening, is the Advanced Learning Opportunity And if you could identify yourself with the audience as well, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Catherine Valega. I'm a parent of 4 girls in Winchester. 3 are at Ambrose and 1 is at McCall. The other authors of the plan are also here this evening. Carrie Boyd, 3 girls at VO. Gong Jing, 2 children, 1 at Morocco and 1 at McCall. And Jerry Mraz has been working with us in an education consultant role. I'd like to start by thanking the school committee for the opportunity to present our alternative proposal tonight and let you all know, audience members, that I really think you're going to be astounded by some of the data we're going to share with you tonight. And I know that by the end of the evening, you're going to be excited about our plan, its flexible and equitable nature, addressing the enrollment challenges as well as the educational needs of all of our children. So let's start by talking about how does advanced learning opportunities address redistricting. Our voluntary, flexible advanced learning opportunities program solves the problem by getting the critical masses to the identified schools without the need for redrawing district borders. It's voluntary. This is giving families choice, flexible, giving the administration the ability to take control of the enrollment numbers year after year, sustainable, working in perpetuity, and equitable. ALO, the Advanced Learning Opportunities Program, adheres to Winchester's educational mission statement, which is to challenge every student appropriately and positively. Now let's turn to why this is important. So we want to start by showing you all how great our children are already doing and how great our town is already doing. So I'm going to explain this graph to you. Here we're looking at 2011 grade 5 math MCAS scores, a scaled score distribution. In MCAS grading vernacular, a score of 240 and above is proficient, and 260 and above is advanced, okay? So first of all, congratulations to our town. Our teachers are doing an amazing job, right? We've got 84% of our children in 2011 and 88% of our children achieved proficiency. That is amazing. We should all be proud of that. Now let's turn to the numbers in those light blue boxes. In those boxes, the CPI indicates the Composite Performance Index, okay? These are the numbers of points on which the town is assessed and judged by. So for every child who has hit that 240 in MCAS, the town gets 100 CPI points. For those who are below, you'll see in the red section, there's fewer points assessed. Federal and state mandates dictate that we get our kids to 100 CPI points, but there's absolutely no incentive to get them beyond, okay? There's no more return on investment for helping these children move beyond that 100 points, right? We have to focus on those kids who are below, and we believe we should focus on those kids that are above. But for the kids that are below, but for the kids that are above proficient, right? Even if the district taught them another 5 years of material, you know, we're not getting more return on our investment in terms of federal and state standards and accountability. We're not getting any more points for them, right? But we know that as a town, we should be demanding more, right? It's the town's, this should be our duty as parents and teachers and administration to prepare these kids for taking the next level of challenge, keeping them interested and engaged in learning. Okay, so that addresses the level of proficiency already in our town. But guess what? Your kids are really smart. In this chart, we're looking at 2012 MCAS scores. 509 out of 1,071 children scored advanced in grades 3 to grade 5 math, right? So what does advanced mean? Oh, excuse me. There we go. Thank you. Per the...
Jump ahead.
Oh, you need to go with that? Got it? Sorry. Almost 50% of our kids have scored advanced. So now let's tell you what advanced means in the MCAS vernacular. Advanced students demonstrate a comprehensive and rigorous understanding of in-depth subject matter and provide sophisticated solutions to complex problems. Now let's chew on this a little bit further. Many of you, I'm hoping, have seen the September 18th New York Times op-ed piece written by Chester E. Finn, a former United States Assistant Secretary of Education. He writes, "Every motivated, high-potential young American deserves a similar opportunity, but the majority of very smart kids lack the wherewithal to enroll in rigorous private schools. They depend on public education to prepare them for life. Yet that system is failing to create enough opportunities for hundreds of thousands of these high-potential boys and girls. Mostly the system ignores them with policies and budget priorities that concentrate on raising the floor under low-achieving students, which is a good and necessary thing to do. But we fail to raise the ceiling for those already well above the floor." His article was incredibly timely, and I actually reached out to Chester Finn and said, "Can you come to our presentation?" He couldn't come, but he did reply to my email saying, "Thanks for your note and all the best wishes with your thoroughly worthy project." Okay, so why are we proposing ALO in this context, right? We're actually proposing really kind of a twofer for the town, right? So the ALO is offering the town a means to adapt to changing enrollment needs, our redistricting needs, without the need to redraw borders, while also meeting the needs of those children who demonstrate readiness to move beyond their 100 CPI points, focusing on the need, as Chester Finn had stated, to raise the ceiling for those children already well above the floor. Why ALO? We're getting critical mass to the schools where it's needed, we're providing equality of education, and we're addressing the needs of every child. In Winchester's educational mission, vision, and values, it includes that we strive to challenge every student appropriately and positively, encourage every student and every teacher to reach his or her potential, and inspire leadership, enthusiasm for education, and a lifelong love for learning. Now let's take a step back and look at the MCAS chart, right? We believe that we need to strive in this town to take the bar, raise the bar, right, beyond proficient. Let's raise it to educational excellence. You know, currently we're shooting for the same goals that many other districts around the state are shooting for, getting everybody up to 100. Let's shoot for more, let's shoot for excellence. ALO shoots for that excellence by challenging every student appropriately and positively, giving them equal access to learning opportunities, and allowing every child to reach their full potential. Now what is ALO, right? You guys are probably all wondering. So ALO is purely the structure of how we're going to arrange a classroom. We propose block scheduling and multi-age classrooms. Block scheduling means that we're going to schedule the math class and the English language arts class at the same time, the same period for each of these grades, right? Your child is able to advance per their readiness level. So let's go through an example. Your third grade son reads at a third grade level. He can do third grade reading, that's great. But your third grade son may do math at a fourth or fifth grade level. We are giving him that opportunity to do that on par with his readiness peers. So let's go on. Right? Block scheduling and multi-age programs are not new to Winchester nor to our surrounding towns. This already occurs. Lincoln offers a multi-age 1-2 program. Ambrose just started G5 math block scheduling, Lexington block schedules, and Melrose now block schedules all of their elementary schools. So this is not new to our town, and it is not new to our surrounding area. But continuing on ALO. ALO, as I said, is very simple. Block scheduling, multi-age. Our children are going to have access to the same field trips, the same specialists, the same Massachusetts core curriculum. Now, we're not going to offer these children anything more special. What is special is that they will be able to progress at their readiness level. They will have the potential to have project work and class work implemented in a deeper and faster pace, per their teacher, per their differentiated needs. Again, this might be new to a lot of you. This graphic is showing a Massachusetts tiered system of support, and an ALO program ties in perfectly for this. So what does this need? What is a tiered system of support? Tiered system of support has typically been thought of in helping children with special needs or behavioral issues. And if they cannot access the education that we need for them on Tier 1 of the educational program, we advance to Tier 2 with intervention, and we keep going. We get them to the point where they can access the education that they deserve. The same thing is applied in ALO. These kids have the opportunity to advance in tier level to access the education that they deserve, allowing them to achieve their full potential. Do we have critical mass? Absolutely. Going back to the 2012 math MCAS scores, almost 48% of Winchester children scored advanced. If our program takes only 25% of those almost 50% of our children opted in, that alone is going to get the numbers that we need at VO. If the school committee and administration says we need more numbers, going to different places, we can open it to lower grades, we can get it to different schools, and we can also consider sending siblings of those children in that program. How do we do it? We've identified a few different assessments that we can use that are inexpensive, that don't take a lot of time, and that where we can get the results back very quickly. When are we going to do it? This is just a general guideline. This is just a suggestion. We'll work with administration to make sure we have something that works for everybody. But November, assessments. December, results evaluated. January, we send letters. Mid-Jan, information sessions and tour. February, parent acceptance letters are due. And spring, administration can make their classroom assignments. To summarize, an Advanced Learning Opportunities program gives parents in the town a choice via a flexible and sustainable program. We're avoiding the needs to redraw lines and move families both now and in the future. And we are increasing the educational rigor of our town. We are shooting for educational excellence, which will benefit everyone. You've heard the expression before, never waste a good crisis. We believe it is our duty as parents, teachers, administrators, and citizens of Winchester to take advantage of this crisis. Today is the day to let our Advanced Learning Opportunities program turn a problem into a 21st century educational opportunity. We thank you for your time and the opportunity to share our idea and hope you support our plan. Now we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Catherine. So please, questions and comments, if you come forward to the microphones.
Hi, I'm Carrie Boyd. I'm going to open this up for questions and answers. Hopefully, cooperatively, we can get them for you. Anybody?
Hi, my name is Ralph Balanese, and I live at Pilgrim Drive, 27 Pilgrim Drive. Thanks to the team for putting together.
Excuse me, Ralph, just if you could lean in so they can
sure.
hear you. Thank you.
Just thanks to the team for putting together such a thoughtful and well thought out presentation. I appreciate it, and thanks to the school committee for allowing me to comment on it. When I read through your proposal and I listened to the presentation, I think I had two questions. The first, should Winchester have an ALO program? And the second was, how effective would the proposal be at accomplishing the goals of redistricting? And I think you guys put together a great argument for question number one, which is, why should Winchester have a program like this? I think seems to be a lot of reason to do it, and I certainly would be interested to learn more and have a more detailed discussion about that. I think what's less clear to me is how effective it would be at achieving the two top goals that the school committee laid out, which is class size and program equity. I think to maintain class sizes, you'd have to get the right number of volunteers that qualify through testing by school, by grade, every year to maintain your class sizes, if I understand it correctly. And I think that's probably highly unlikely to just sort of happen naturally that would occur. So I suspect it'd have to be some sort of intervention by the school committee or the superintendent to say, allocate slots to schools. So Morocco, that's overcrowded, would get more slots, and VO, which is not overcrowded, would get few, if any, slots. So that sort of brings me to my second concern, which is the program equity, which is the second goal. As a VO parent, it's not clear to me that this would allow an equal opportunity to the program for my kids at VO, given that the likely scenario is there'd be a lot fewer slots available to them if that's the way you would manage the class size. So just to sort of summarize, I think it's a great idea for the town. I think it's something the town should explore as an opportunity. But it's less clear to me that it would be an effective solution to the redistricting goals as the school committee's laid out. So
Okay.
that was it. Thank you.
Sure. First of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. I know you have busy schedules. We're very happy to have such a nice turnout. Those are a lot of questions. I'm going to try to address as much as I can. I want to, I guess,
Carrie,
first...
could you just push it
Sure.
a little bit? Thanks.
Thank you. Is that better? I want to point out that this is a novel approach. We have an opportunity here. We can do better than just redistricting. What our plan is proposing is really helping three major segments of our society. Okay, one, obviously, we talked about how instead of having to redistrict, administration can rein in and control the numbers that they have to juggle year after year. One of the biggest questions we should be asking ourselves is, what do we do after this year? What happens for the next 3 years? This problem that we have of enrollment expanding is going to continue. What we believe is a flexible option is probably the best approach. Now, you were wondering, how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we get the right kids from the right schools and balance out those classrooms and specialty spaces? We are confident with a flexible approach that we can take those numbers, and once we get the criteria from administration, that we can create that comprehensive plan. We have some examples of that. We've thought it through. But the nature of our plan allows us to do that in perpetuity. We don't want to have to redress this issue in 2-3 years. Our program allows for expansion. And when we talk about inclusion, when we're talking about a community as a whole, how do we address a program that can benefit the most children in town? When you look at these numbers, and it blew me away when we really looked at it, we're talking about 50%, nearly 50% of our kids scored advanced. First of all, amazing job from our teachers. We knew they were doing a great job. But what do we do with these kids right now? Let's address their needs for one. But how does that help everybody else in our community? It does. What we're talking about is taking a spectrum of children and reducing that spectrum for those teachers so they can more effectively work with that classroom whose abilities are closely tied to each other. We believe they're going to increase their scores. We believe the children who can use more challenge deserve it, should have it, will get it through this program. How is it equitable to everybody else? I'm a VO mom too. I'm concerned. I think my children could really benefit through this program. I think we all have to look at this and decide for ourselves what is the best approach. Is the approach to have, I don't know how many people are being redistricted, but I heard it was over 100. Is that the best approach? Dividing lines, property lines, and then worrying about, are we going to do this again? We just did it 6 years ago. Let's think about a better alternative. This plan is that. We got together, we thought about all the issues, and what we came up was a plan that's fantastic. The other two components, we talked about administration, now never having to juggle those numbers again, having control instead of being at the mercy of it every year. Let's talk about the kids. I was blown away. Nearly 50% of these kids are ready for more challenge. How do we deliver it to them? This plan does it in a very easy way. We're not asking for something that's so different than what we have. We're only changing two things, math and ELA. We're going to do block scheduling. It just means that we're going to have those two classes at the same time so that we can adjust those kids and teach them on a readiness level. Now, I'm going on too long, so I'm going to move on if that's okay. And of course, we have others.
Just to address a couple of your questions more specifically. Your second one first. At VO, there's not really an issue. We're not trying to moving kids from one place in VO to another place in VO is not going to be a problem. So it's not as if VO will have less access to the program. In fact, it's simpler for VO.
Excuse me. To keep order, please only speak at the microphone, and we also have other people that have questions.
You're right, it does come down to the numbers from what you were just saying. And the reality is that we've looked at how do you get a critical mass of students from the schools that need reduction in enrollment to the schools that might need more enrollment. And whether it's VO or if administration decides that they're going to move to Parkhurst, freeing up some room at Lynch, we can move some ALO program at Lynch. And there are different ways of organizing it. One other thing that I wanted to address, you use the word qualify. The assessments we're giving aren't really a qualifying tool. They're really, at some level, a rating tool. Like what students have the most need, and we try to address the students with the most need first. There's no way, given the constraints of enrollment capacities in the schools and the critical masses needed to form classroom after classroom after classroom, that you can do it completely evenly and sequentially. But the reality is we do have the tools to try to figure out what kids need it the most. And you're right, that there might be some kids, if we need to reduce in Morocco, there might be some kids more from Morocco that are going into the program because we need them from Morocco rather than another school. There's some issue there, but it's so minor compared to the major improvement we're making in the system.
Next question, thanks.
Hi, my name is Juanita Cerda. I'm a Lincoln mother. I love the ideas in the presentation. I think my son actually is in multi-age, and we've had a great experience. I do think that I do have certain concerns about, I don't know how to put it more positively, but like a little bit of the elitist feeling that this gets. I think that instead of trying to have one school where only a small population goes, and when you're saying that 50% of our kids could benefit from a more advanced or a more innovative way of learning, shouldn't we be trying to put those types of learnings into all of our classrooms? So we're going to go...
Please hold the comments.
Blah, blah, blah.
I agree with you. I mean, it would be great if we could make every classroom be the most it could be for every kid. And the reality is there are constraints within a classroom. A teacher only has so many resources in time and energy and materials to work with students. But
but what are you going to say to the, if this is a success, right? And then suddenly all of us, all the 50%, which probably is more than that, but all the 50% wants to go in there, and you're going to say, oh no, only 25% of you can go in. And even more, my older kid goes there, and then you say, oh, maybe not, now you're saying, oh, maybe we can have the second kid go to this program. Maybe he's not ready. Or maybe he's ready, and you're going to say to some of the other parents, oh, you cannot go in because this kid is going to have his brother there. Or even worse, you say, your second child cannot go there. And all of a sudden, I have to go to my house and say to my child, I'm sorry that your brother is really special.
And those are all good, those are all valid concerns, and I agree with you. What we're trying to do, though, is we're trying to make the education that individual students get in Winchester be more aligned with what their educational need is. And so if a student, if you say your other son doesn't qualify, as you say, though your child ostensibly is getting the appropriate education in the classroom that he's in right now. These are for kids who have shown that they are beyond the capacity at some level that we can deliver in individual classrooms as it presently stands. And so this is trying to address that issue. Yep, it's not a perfect thing. I mean, we're not rearranging the whole school district and rearranging the educational system. We're trying to make an improvement and address the redistricting needs at the same time. Right here, Carrie.
Next question.
Okay, let me just add to
Excuse
that.
me, why don't we return at the end of the night to sort of follow up on that, if that's okay? We just get another question.
Yes. I went through a lot of the concerns that the woman who just spoke went through, but what I realized is that a lot of those issues come down to personal choices. And I don't know what I would do if one of my kids would score that high and yada, yada, yada. But it leaves the choices up to us. If we want to have our children in this more, I don't want to be careful of my word choice, but diverse in terms of scores, we can make that choice. If we want to put our kids in a private school kind of setting at that description, which we are surrounded by anyway, we're right next to Cambridge and Arlington. They're all in our own town we have a Montessori school. That's a reality no matter if we do this model or not, and let's open up that opportunity for our kids. And I only see benefits in the other plans. Where are the benefits in the other plans except for practicality in terms of space?
Right. Well, thank you for mimicking it. I mean, we said it throughout the plan, but this is giving parents choice. You know, many of us have already lived through redistricting, and potentially we're going to live through it again. And this model is giving you the choice, exactly as you said. One thing I'd like to clarify is kind of the private school. You know, we want to avoid an elitist type of structure on this. This is the same common core that everyone, it's the same common core, the teaching standards that everyone in our town has access to. Okay, and the only thing that we're proposing is the block scheduling and multi-age, which already happens, albeit inequitably, currently. So in fact, what we're trying to do is make our current educational system more equitable for everybody, not just the redliners, and more, I lost my train of thought, more rigorous for the town of Winchester. It is our time to take advantage of this crisis and implement a more rigorous educational system.
Thank you. One quick question, if that's okay? Thank you. Then we'll go to the next presentation. Yes.
Hi, I'm Chris Costello. I live on Robin Hood Road, and I'm Ambrose parent. And I think the idea of the block scheduling and the sort of tiering of students into different grade level, different age levels is great. My feeling is, though, why wouldn't we just do that everywhere, first of all? And that being the case, if we did that everywhere, then I don't understand how doing that would actually address the capacity issues that are forcing redistricting. And I think also one of the things that I'm not sure who said it was, somebody said this allows the teachers to teach kids that are more closely aligned ability-wise. I think that happens across the whole spectrum. It's not just the kids that happen to be 2 grade levels above. It's also those kids that are, you know, a couple of grade levels below. They're all being taught by teachers who are sitting with kids that are all in the same sort of learning path. So I think it's great. I love it. But why not do it everywhere, and how does it address the capacity?
Okay, so why don't we do this everywhere? That's a great question. I mean, this is a different approach. We think it's a very workable approach. But one of the things we're thinking of is that we're rolling it out. We're starting it at VO. This can be rolled out at every school. We can expand this program. VO is expandable too. We have 3 extra classrooms that we can build in so that if we find enrollment starts increasing, we can open it up. And I think this addresses one of the questions earlier, to those children who want to get in and can't get in. I believe that it should be rolled out to everybody district-wide. Perhaps this is the point where we start that, and we're hoping eventually that it does grow to that. So I appreciate the question, and I think that's where we're going. Do you want to wrap it up, Catherine? Thank you all tonight for coming out, listening. We're going to try to give you some of our information so that if you have more questions, because I'm sure there are more.
And I'm happy to get the presentation to anybody, you know, via email. I don't know whether it's up on the Winchester Redistricting site or not, but.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much. Michael. Great. Sure you identify yourself. Okay.
While that's getting set up, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Mike Galvin. I'm here with Omar and Salma to present the kindergarten flex plan. Thank you. So why should the school committee choose an alternative plan? Why not just stick with the same redrawing of the lines? The problem lies in the uncertainty of enrollments and how this expands beyond the boundaries and forces the cycle of redistricting. What do I mean by the problems with enrollments? Well, this year, there were 237 5-year-olds on the census. But when kindergarten started, there were 301 students. There was 64 students that weren't on any map. One school had its enrollment 30% off of projection. This only increases over time. None of the students that will be in elementary school 10 years from now are on any census. So when you draw lines, you're hoping that those students fall within those lines so it makes sense. Alternative plans is a way of moving the students to fit the districts, to make a better use of the town's resources. Our plan focuses on kindergartners. And why kindergartners? Because kindergartners are the source of the greatest uncertainty in the numbers. So we felt that you bring the flexibility to where you have the greatest uncertainty. So the kindergarten flex plan is a way of systematically moving kindergartners from overcrowded schools to undercrowded schools. A couple keys in this plan are that students in grades 1 through 5 won't be affected, and that kindergartners return to their home district after kindergarten. So how does this plan work? Basically, it's 4 simple steps. You identify the overcapacity, undercapacity schools. You determine how many students need to move out of the overcapacity schools, and you allocate those students to the undercapacity schools. The 4th step is that you choose which students stay, which students go, based on a certain criteria. The first 3 steps are handled by the model developed by Omar. I'll let Omar explain that.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everybody, for coming. My name is Omar Baba, and I am a parent of 2 boys in the Morocco School District. So I'm going to talk about the spreadsheet model that we developed for the KG Flex Plan. The model takes into account design capacities in each school, student projections, and the desired classroom size targets. The model is flexible. It allowed us to build scenarios quickly and accurately by changing assumptions and exploring the impacts. So we fed the model with student projection data for 2013, and we used a classroom size of 20 and 22 students, depending on the grade level, as you can see in this table behind me. The model showed us the number of kindergarten students that need to be reallocated out of their home district, and we ended up with the following allocation that you can see in the 4th row. I'm not going to read the numbers, but you can see them there. The bottom line of this is that we were able to reclaim specialty classrooms, 2 in Ambrose, 2 in Lincoln, 1 in Morocco. Now I want to show a couple of charts that describe the results in a bit more closely. The first one is classroom size by grade in every school. Now the first thing you'll notice is that this model is granular enough to give you a complete view of the classroom size situation at every grade. So at every school you'll see 5 bars representing each grade, KG through 5. Now you can see that grades kindergarten to 2nd grade, which are the 3 bars on the left, the model stayed within the target size of 20 students. And that for grades 3 through 5, which are the 3 bars on the right, the size is 22 students or less, which is exactly what we want. Next, I want to show you the number of classrooms needed in each school before and after the KG Flex Plan as compared to the design capacities. So we start in this chart with the red bars, which represent the capacity numbers at every school. So we have 23 in Ambrose, 21 in Lincoln, Morocco, and VO, and 22 in Lynch. Now we add to that the bar on the left in blue, which is the number of classrooms needed in each school in order to satisfy the classroom size target under the current conditions, that is to say, with the current district boundaries. Now, you'll notice 2 things here very quickly. Both VO and Lynch are under capacity. And on the other hand, Ambrose, Lincoln, and Morocco all need classrooms beyond their current capacity. Now, the way Ambrose, Lincoln, and Morocco deal with this currently is a combination of 2 things. One, they repurpose specialty space into additional classrooms, and they cram more children in the classrooms beyond the desired class size targets. Now, obviously, both of these things are bad. We want to get away from them as much as we can. Now let's see the results of the KG Flex Plan reallocation in the same chart. So as you can see from the green bars, which is the result of our KG Flex Plan, we were able to bring the number of classrooms needed at Ambrose, Lincoln, and VO to 100% of capacity, which is ideal. You can't do better than this. As a result of that, we were able to reclaim 2 specialty rooms in each of Ambrose and Lincoln. We also made better use of Lynch, nearing 100% of capacity over there. Now, Morocco may not look great in comparison to those 2 other schools, but we're clearly better than before. And we are also still able to reclaim 1 specialty room in Morocco. So one thing to note also that if we relax the classroom size target to 23 in the 4th grade only in Morocco, we can bring down the number of classrooms needed there by 1, reclaiming yet another specialty room. So, which is a point I want to highlight about this model, is that it's very flexible, and it allows you, the school committee, to make trade-offs on a school-by-school and grade-by-grade level. So you want, bigger size classrooms, you're going to reclaim more space, or vice versa. So it's really up to you. And so now that I described the spreadsheet model, I want to turn it over back to Michael. He's going to talk about the final step, which is the selection process. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. So now that you know how many students have to move, the question is, how do you choose who moves? Well, we suggest doing this on 3 criteria: cost, whether the kindergartners have siblings, and proximity to home. Now, cost, when you're talking about moving, is really talking about busing. So how do you avoid the cost of busing? Well, we created a bus avoidance map. Now, the town has to pay for busing students if you put them in a district further than 2 miles. So what we did was we drew a 1.5 mile radius around the 2 schools that would be receiving students, VO and Lynch. And VO is in red and Lynch is in green. The remaining colors, the orange, the purple, and the blue, are the areas of Ambrose, Lincoln, and Morocco, where if those students moved to either Lynch or VO, you would have to pay for busing. So how does this work? Say Ambrose started with 80 students, and the model told you you had to move 40 to VO. So the first thing you would look at is you would look at how many students are in the orange zone that would cost you to move to VO. Say that number was 30. So you would not move those 30 from Ambrose. You'd keep those there. So that's 30 of the 40 you need. So you have 50 students remaining. So then you'd move to priority 2. Which students have siblings? So say of those 50, half of them had siblings. So 25 have siblings, 25 don't. So the 25 without siblings would move to VO, and then you'd have to choose out of the 25, 10 to stay in Ambrose and 15 to go, and you could do this by lottery. Thus, you end up with 40 students each way. Now, that was the criteria we chose. You can choose other criteria to make that decision. So what's the timeline? Well, we felt that we could match the timeline to the all-day kindergarten selection timeline. Basically, you get the information in March, you run through the models, you do your selection process in April, and you notify parents in May. Students that come in after that, then the school committee would just place where they had the space. So how does the kindergarten flex plan do against the school committee's goals? Well, as Omar said, we met class size 100% because that was the first part the model looked at. On reclaimed space and gaining classroom space, we met that for 4 of the 5 schools, and as Omar explained, Morocco it only reclaimed 1 space. It could have reclaimed a second if you allowed the 4th grade to go to 23 students. On cost, we felt that the major cost of this would be the busing cost. We felt we eliminated that. And the administration of this is built on the all-day kindergarten. You're collecting a lot of that information anyway when you sign up for kindergarten, It's just a matter of collecting if students have siblings and which schools they go to and putting their addresses in. So you need some limited man hours up front to kind of get used to the system, working the model, taking this and taking the students' information. But really the model's handling the big number, the 320 kindergarten students, whereas you're only doing the selection process on a district-by-district basis, so you're only dealing with 40 to 80 students as you go through the different priorities. The impacts, well, we feel that this prevents you from having to redraw the lines, the boundaries. It allows a mixing of kindergartners with other students, so when they get to 6th grade, they're going to remember those students and have additional friends. And we feel the process is transparent and objective. The cons are you won't know where your children will be going to kindergarten until the May before they do. And you do have the possibility of having two children in different schools. Grandfathering, this plan doesn't affect anyone who's in school today, any student who's in school today. The plan minimizes the number of students that moves because to within 2 miles. In terms of safety and traffic, kindergartners either have an adult with them or are driven to school. So you have that adult supervision to get them to their new school. And in timing, we felt that timing could meet the all-day kindergarten plan. And in terms of sustainability, we feel the plan excels in sustainability. That's basically the plan. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, we can take them.
Thank you. Well done. Questions, please? Microphone.
Hi, I thought that was an amazing presentation, very thorough, a lot of data. One of your, I guess, downsides was that students, if you have 2 children, they would be going to different schools. What I don't think you clarified, and I think I understood, so I just want to ask for clarification, is that would only be in the kindergarten year, correct? When they go to 1st grade, they are now back with their siblings.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, please come to the mic. And if you could identify yourself.
Yeah, Mara Sullivan. Thanks for that presentation. I'm still concerned about Morocco. I noticed that it still remains very overcrowded. We really need to get closer to the 21 classroom. Excuse me? So do you have any possibility of accommodating that in your plan?
Well, we looked at that. I mean, there's the 4th grade where you only had to relax by 1 student to regain the classroom, and there's also the 2nd grade where I think the number was 85, so that's 21 plus 1 class would have 22, and then you could reclaim that second space to meet the criteria. The other way of doing it is if the town did pay for busing, then you could bus to VO.
It seems like there's capacity at Lynch under this plan, is that right?
Yes, there is capacity at Lynch, but you could bus from Lynch. The reason why we kept it that way is we wanted to eliminate busing, so we only moved half of the kindergartners out of Lynch because we felt the other half were outside the VO zone, so you'd have to bus them to VO.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Roy Procops, McCall Road. I'm curious why kindergartners, and a couple concerns I have about kindergartners. Transitions are very difficult for kindergartners and 1st graders. I know my children, when they 1st grade was a big transition out of kindergarten. Having to change schools at that boundary is difficult. I would think 3rd or 4th graders might be much better suited for that sort of transition. And the other consideration about kindergarten, I know at least at Ambrose there are special kindergarten rooms that were built out for kindergartners. I don't know if this is the case in other schools, but all classrooms aren't the same at that kindergarten level. It might be difficult if you take a lot of kindergartners out of Ambrose to solve the population issue. Those rooms aren't being well utilized at that point.
In terms of why kindergartners, actually we kind of went along the lines that kids are more resilient than we give them credit to. it's actually easier on the parents, because parents are already dealing with those transportation issues when the kids are in preschool, so they have to wait one more year. We thought that, that it actually made it easier on the parents. I understand that you feel, sure.
Yeah, I just want to add, my name is Salma Abunadi, and why we chose kindergartners. One of the reasons is we do know that there are actually families who do choose to take their kindergartners to private schools, so it's not like it's not happening. And we believe that it's working and the transition is smooth. Now, there is no perfect plan that we can come up with, but this is just one of the plans that will give us flexibility. I mean, we're open to other suggestions, but we're just giving an example of a flexible plan, an alternative plan to drawing the lines. So we can talk about third grader moving the class, but that's how we chose it.
Your other question about the space and one of the things we noticed in the floor plans that Mr. Nixon gave on VO is that the size of the classrooms are all pretty similar. I mean, the kindergarten has a slight, I think the average is 921 square feet, where the average of the rest of the school is like 906 square feet, or somewhere in that range. It's like 15 to 20 square foot difference. So we're really talking about probably 1 foot in the classroom.
Can I add something to it? What we try to do, there's so many factors and if scenarios, but what we try to do is just take the goals and considerations, and that's how we developed our plan. I mean, if we take every if scenario, we will be developing a 100-page report, but we just try to answer the questions, and that's the answer.
Hi, my name is Shelley Walsh. I live on Wildwood Street. I just have a quick question about this plan, and if anyone else coming up next for the other plans can address it. How does this work with the teachers and the teachers union? It seems like teachers would have to move along with a new kindergarten class, and I don't know if that would work, how that would work. And also with regard to the Lynch School, which is kind of takes the brunt of this plan, especially with kindergartners. They already serve the nursery school. Kindergartners have a lot of drop-off, pick-up, as opposed to busing. If that was taken into consideration at all. Thanks.
Well, again, we use the information we have. So we don't have the information about how it's going to affect the teachers. But you will have a scenario 1 year where you have only 1 KG class in a school or 2. So what does the school district do with that? We don't have that answer. So that's something that we can ask the superintendent. For the kids, actually we thought about this. I think I have it written, so it's easy. So there is a possibility that a family will have to go to 2 schools. But what we try to do is to really minimize or try to locate or remove students to a school that is within 2 miles. So we're trying to minimize the distance. And there are 2 solutions to that. One of them is which we already have, which is the early supervised drop-off, which is about 15 to 20 minutes. So if you do have that, that gives you enough time to drop off the other child within 2 miles. And we also suggest maybe... oh, okay, I'm sorry.
You might want to just repeat the question if you're going to answer that so they can hear it.
Right. She's asking, I think you're saying that Lynch is receiving too many kindergartners. Right, haven't considered that. And at the end of the day, Lynch gets 5 kindergarten classes, VO has 6, and Ambrose, Lincoln, and Morocco used to have 4. So you're getting 1 more than a lot of other schools are used to. Okay.
Well, it's a good question, for sure, but we're also trying to balance the total number of students here. So you lose some, you gain some. It's a very valid question because maybe nursery and drop-off kind of tends to bunch together, maybe. But we feel like at the we're also balancing the total number, which should relieve the total situation. At least in the grand scheme of things. Maybe in terms of bunching, maybe there are certain measures we can do to ease the traffic in and out. But at least at the global level, at every school, we're trying to balance the numbers in a way to kind of match the capacity, the design capacity. So we're hoping that matching the design capacity will also mean that we're also easing up the traffic maybe in some schools and maybe making it a little bit worse in other schools, but at least we're giving opportunity to everybody to get a good education.
One way you could handle that problem is the traffic issue. In any redistricting plan, you're going to be moving more students to Lynch because that's where you're creating space. And if there was some way to encourage busing, I mean, even if the parents have to pay for it or you subsidize it some way, because one bus can handle 77 students, so 2 buses handles the entire group of kindergartners moving.
Hi, Scott Drown, Middlesex Street, and I was wondering what happens 1 year out when all of these kindergarten students return back to their schools? Is there no overcrowding at any grade level except kindergarten?
Well, actually, because you're moving the kindergartners, you have that 320 students every year. So you take them out and you fill the schools with the grades 1 through 5. So what ends up happening is that you have the space because you're moving kindergartners in the year that they return to first grade. Do you understand?
It's also, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's also a yearly process that we have to do. I mean, it's not a 1 year solution. This is a multi-year solution. So we balance the numbers every year. So after the kindergartners finish kindergarten, they go back to being first graders, and now they go back to their first to their home district, and then we have a new batch of kindergartners coming in, and then we do the rebalancing again.
But then...
And the 5th graders are out too. Right?
Okay, but then you've got more first graders. Don't you have to then shrink the kindergarten again to make up for the room that you've just used up?
But the year that is going to follow, we don't know the number. That's why it's a year-by-year process. So when we move the kindergartners, say in 2013-14, that's the number because we have overcapacity of 80 students. That's what the number we work with. So when, say, we removed 40 students to KG in other school in 2013-14, then 14-15, they're going to come back. Then we're going to look at the kindergartners that second year, how many of those are enrolled, and then we're going to determine what's the overcapacity. So I don't know whether that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess that. Basically, what you're seeing, I mean, it depends on the projection of where the kindergartners are and the number of kindergartners that you have. And the number of first graders that you have is based on the number of kindergartners that you have. So the numbers that we have here, when you compare, and we looked at the projections of the other years, and you can do it for the next couple of years.
Okay, so this will be the last question for these presenters. I'm sorry.
Hi, Stacy Klala, Sergeant Road. I think we all appreciate the work that you've done. You've clearly worked very hard at this. I would like to reiterate the concerns of the gentleman about the transition for kindergartners. I think kindergarten is a time when stability is particularly important, and what you're asking is to have a major transition, and not just for a single year, moving forward. That's difficult not only on the parents, it provides a great deal of ambiguity, but also it's administratively challenging. I don't anticipate that the school committee, or whoever would be tasked with this, would look forward to this continual rebalancing, and a lottery, I think, was involved. It just seems like it's very resource intensive.
I understand your point. I myself went to 2 different kindergartners and then a different school, 2 different schools for kindergarten and a different school for first grade. That's just my personal experience. I guess that would be up to the school committee to decide if that's something that they just don't want to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Candy Ratnasamy, and I have an alternative plan called Open Enrollment. I think the background here has been covered in very eloquently by folks that went before me, so let me just reiterate one point. I'd really like to see the town come up with a model that's sustainable and doesn't require redrawing of boundaries, because we all know that has been a challenge. So I really hope that an alternative model can be found that allows us to make this the last time we need redistricting here. The proposal I am presenting here today is actually derived from one that has been very successful at Acton. In a nutshell, the way it approaches the problem is to take a town-wide approach to solve town-wide challenges. And it brings about a flexible and sustainable process that can benefit the entire community, but also shares the impacts equitably across town. So the first step in the process is to manage capacity. So you go through a capacity planning process each year, and you do that based on actual numbers from earlier in the year. You don't use projections that are really coming from many years prior, which, as we've heard, can have errors, and no matter how good we make our models, these things are hard to predict, and errors can compound over time. And when you have inflexible boundaries, that can lead to challenges. So we need to do this each year. We allocate capacity first to the grades 1 to 5, kids who went to a particular school in the prior year remain at that school, and we allocate space to accommodate them in classrooms, accounting for changes based on people leaving and so on. Then we allocate specialist space. So this ensures that we've got adequate specialist space at each school. The remaining space gets allocated to kindergarten classrooms. Assuming we've got enough space across town, every school gets the space that it needs. We ensure that we meet the capacity targets that have been set up. Specialist space gets allocated, and we can meet our class size goals as well. The next step in the process is the actual enrollment. You may have heard about open choice. Please lay those plans aside. This is different. In this model, there are no elementary school districts, so they're not going to move. All the town's children have the opportunity to access all the programs that are available, and we try to account for family preferences to the extent that is possible. What that achieves is program equity, and we also take the family preferences into account, as I said. Let's get into the guts of the enrollment process itself. Grades 1 through 5 stay in the same school, as I said earlier. There are some exceptions. I'll get to those later. The kindergarten enrollment proceeds in stages. So first we enroll kids with special needs. Next we enroll kids that have an older sibling in an elementary school. There is a preference given to kids that want to walk. And we take family preferences into account to enroll people in the schools where they want to be. Now, there is given the way the capacity versus where the schools are today, there is going to be a need for a lottery when the requests for a particular school exceed the capacity that's available. And I'll get to the details of all of that in a moment. So in a nutshell, we're doing this every year and we're making sure that we balance the resources and enrollment across town and make sure that things are done in an equitable fashion. So let me go through the tiers one by one so it's all clear. Special needs kids, if they can be served most appropriately in one school, would be assigned to that school. If they can be served in several schools, they can request a preferential allotment to that school. Siblings, we want to keep families together. So if a child has a sibling that's already in an elementary school, they can request, if they desire to have their kids together, to attend the same school. Throughout the redistricting process, we've heard from a lot of people asking that we encourage and allow people to walk to school. There's lots of documented evidence that this is great for kids, it's great for the teachers, and it's great for the community as a whole. So what this plan does is to provide a preference to families that are within 1 mile of a school and who intend to walk regularly. This was, so the 1 mile distance comes from the Safe Routes to School organization, and you can see the citation there. Then we take into account family preferences. So we start with, for each school, the families that chose that school as their first preference, then we do the second preference, and so on. Now, if a particular family has chosen either based on a sibling preference or a walker preference, they do not get a first preference. That preference that they've already expressed is their first preference, and they get the second preference, and so on. When we get to a stage for each school that where requests might exceed capacity, then we have a lottery to determine who gets in. We can manage the lottery many ways. It could be, set up a lottery committee that takes turns drawing cards. We could use simple software like Excel to manage this. What's important here, I think, to point out is that we ought to maintain confidentiality in the overall process. A family's preferences are personal preferences, and we should allow that to remain that way. Perhaps more important to the system as a whole is that we don't encourage the outcomes from 1 year to impact preferences going into the next year. So we don't want people saying, well, everybody chose school A last year, so that should be the best school, and I should choose that too. So we don't want to encourage that. So we ought to maintain confidentiality in this process. There is a wait list maintained for changes that occur over summer and throughout the school year. If a child wants to move as a result of that, we can accommodate that. The transition year. So the first year when we put this program into place, we'll need some changes. Normally, grades 1 to 5 stay in the same school. However, we know we already have crowding at some schools, and we can't manage that by leaving the students where they are. So in the first year, we would go through the same open enrollment process for all the grades, one at a time. This, of course, means that we can get the capacity where we want to, where we need to, and meet those capacity targets 100%. We can allocate specialist space, ensure that there's space in every school. And we can ensure that our class size goals are met as well. There is the opportunity to balance long-term and short-term needs by grandfathering one or more classrooms if appropriate and depending on how this plays out. New students in this model coming into grades 1 through 5 will be able to choose from the schools that do have capacity. In the same vein, if a child who's at one school wants to move to another school, that can also be accommodated, assuming, of course, that there's capacity. Suggested timeline, we notify everybody in November. We will need to communicate that there are some changes. In January, we can provide for school tours so that people can make some informed choices. In February and March, everybody registers their preferences. April, we go through enrollment, notify everybody. And in August, we can manage wait lists and account for any last-minute minor changes that need to occur. One of the really interesting aspects of this program, and a really important one, is that it can actually save us money. Resource allocation is done on a town-wide basis. And what this means is that you don't have the classroom size constraints at each school district level. You can manage that more efficiently on a town-wide basis. This is, again, an approach to solve town-wide problems on a town-wide basis. So when we do that, we can get by with fewer classrooms and over time reduce the expenses that we have. Let me go through an example to make that clear. So these are the projected enrollment numbers for the kindergarten in the 2016 to 2017 kindergarten year. We've got, for kindergarten, our goal is to keep class sizes under 20. So we go through for each school district in a traditional model, we would go through and say, well, you've got 71 kids in Ambrose, we need 4 classrooms to accommodate them. Well, our classroom size guideline allows for up to 20 children. So we've got space in those 4 classrooms for up to 80 kids. There's 71 kids actually there, so there's actually there's actually 9 additional seats that are available. Going down through each school district, you can see that the traditional school district model would require 18 classrooms across town to accommodate the projected enrollment. However, because open enrollment does the enrollment on a town-wide basis, we need 14 classrooms. We save 2 classrooms, which of course is that 40 is the 40 seats that were sort of available, if you will, but we couldn't efficiently use in a traditional school district model. Now, if you looked at that and said, is that really true? Is that going to occur every year? No, we're not going to be able to save 2 classrooms off of every grade in every year. But on a town-wide basis, grades K through 5, I did go through the numbers, the projected enrollment, and every year we save at least 5 classrooms, more than 5 classrooms in some years. So it's not going to be kindergarten in every year, it's going to be, maybe 2 classrooms off of this grade, 1 classroom off of that grade, but on a town-wide basis, what you achieve is that you can reduce 5 classrooms. So, needless to say, that means we can save some money over time. If you use an estimated savings of $75,000 per classroom, and the total cost of education in this town is about over 11,000. If you use an 18 classroom size, you get to over 200,000. So I'm not talking about eliminating all the costs associated with educating a student. I'm talking about, carving out about $75,000 out of the $200,000 that we spend per person could be saved. All of that is not going to accrue to us on day one. Some of that's going to occur day one, but certainly this is a long-term process that we need to be thinking about, and we can save money over time. So this could accrue in terms of over time. There's fewer teachers that we need to hire as we have growth in our population. Another way to look at this is that we have the opportunity to defer or possibly reduce the number of classrooms we need to build out. So we may not need those additional classrooms in VO for some time. We may not need to redo classrooms in other schools for some time. So all of that gives us some more options, more wiggle room. We can, through our to our elected representatives here, this gives us flexibility to manage things the way we want. So if the school committee wants to rather than save money in a particular year, reduce the class size, that's a possibility. Deferring capital expenses versus spending the money and reducing class size, another opportunity. So there's lots of opportunity for how we could manage this.
Excuse me, can I ask you to wrap up so we have time for questions, please?
Absolutely. So cost considerations, there are costs in the first year to put this all into place. On an ongoing basis, thanks to the folks that developed the buffer zone plan, they talked to the administration in Acton, which is a similar size, similar number of students in schools, and Acton takes about 20% of one person to manage this system. Busing, we will need to pay for busing kids that are more than 2 miles away. It costs about $50,000 for a bus for a year. That can transport about 77 kids, and what that ends up being is we probably need 2 to 3 buses depending on how the choices play out. And depending on space availability, we may be able to accommodate more than just the kids that need to move more than 2 miles. So to wrap up here, this is a model that can meet all the lofty goals that were set out for us by the school committee, and in addition gives us flexibility so we don't need to be redrawing those boundaries, and helps us save money over time. It is election season, I guess, so let me ask you all to vote on November 5th. Vote early, vote often, and vote for open enrollment.
Well, don't go away yet. I think we have some questions and some comments. If you could step up to the microphone and again, identify yourself first, that'd be great.
I'd actually like to take an assumed name, but I think I probably can't. My name is Isabel McGee, and I'm on the RAC committee. Hope no one's brought tomatoes or anything for pelting purposes. Just one observation, which is I know you call this school choice, but I'm a little concerned that for some people this won't seem like a choice. Obviously, I can see how it works very well for the administration, but I'm not sure how it works for the families. In particular, we on the RAC committee have been told over and over how popular the neighborhood type model is, or some variation on it. And I'm thinking about the Ambrose community, which I'm charged to represent. If it's really true that you give priority to people who live within 1 mile of school, I'm thinking about a scenario for the first year when you need to fill up VO, where members of the Ambrose community who live more than 1 mile away from Ambrose would actually be the school administration might choose to send them to VO, and you might actually get a situation where people who live down in the Sims Corner, far southeast part of the Ambrose district would be going through the Ambrose district to get to VO, because it strikes me that if you're giving preference to people who walk at Ambrose to stay at Ambrose, and the people who are furthest away from Ambrose are actually going to end up potentially going to VO. I don't know whether that was part of a scenario that people might not find very popular.
So the model certainly takes a town-wide approach, and doesn't focus on neighborhoods. That said, it does provide for people to make choices, and a lot of people will make choices to stay closer to home. So in that sense, I think you will have people staying closer to their neighborhoods. So I don't think that gets really destroyed. In terms of comparing it to the alternatives, I mean, what we have today is not a viable alternative. We do need some form of moving people between schools. Because this program gives people a choice, this can reduce the number of people that would need to be impacted. So if on a townwide basis, if we have, say, 5% of the other school districts choose to say, VO is going to be a brand new shining facility and I want to go there, then everybody else gets space. I can't predict if that will occur, but that is the kind of possibility that this does encourage. And in that sense, it's better than a traditional redistricting model because the number of people that need to move are going to be the same, regardless of which model you choose. It's I think this provides a more equitable way than moving a boundary.
Other questions? Seeing none? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
While we're transitioning, just a couple of points of clarification. The question regarding movement of teachers, regardless of the redistricting model that ultimately is implemented, we know that we need to move 6 classrooms to VO. There'll be 6 additional classrooms, 3 additional classrooms at Lynch. So that many teachers will be moving. There is a process that governs that through the teachers' collective bargaining agreement, and next the process will follow. And then we'll have a chance at the end, but all of the PowerPoint presentations will be posted tomorrow on the website.
Good evening.
Hi, hello. I am Denise Goluboff. I have 2 children at Ambrose. I live on Albemarle Road. I think through this whole process, at this point, I think we'd all choose a root canal over additional redistricting, and I think that's been very clear. I think we've all talked about the fact that this is it's a divisive process just by its nature, and I think every other group that's come up here has said this is something we want to try to avoid doing time and time again. And it's not just because it's divisive and time-consuming and costly, it is, but when you redistrict any child, asking them to make that difficult transition, if it doesn't result in the desired effect, then it's essentially, it's ultimately irresponsible to do that. We should be sure that when we're moving children, we have the numbers to back up the fact that it wasn't all for naught, that we moved them with good faith, that this would reduce overcrowding. And if it doesn't, then we need to step back, as I believe the committee did in June, and say, wait a minute, let's make sure our numbers are right. And I appreciate that the committee did that. I know the RAC is working hard right now on maps, but ultimately our group said, well, what can we do? We are pragmatists at heart. So I love a lot of these other presentations. I would love to see any of these be implemented to avoid this over and over redistricting. But as pragmatists, we wanted to keep it simple. And we said, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's look for a plan that we know other high-performing districts in this area have implemented. And buffer zones have been implemented successfully in Brookline and in Newton, which are certainly districts that people clamor to get into, and have recently been implemented in Arlington. Now, that's recent, but the other 2, it's proven, it's worked. And so we're taking a common sense approach and looking at buffer zones as a viable opportunity and walking through what that would look like for our town. Ultimately, and I think this was said before, but projections are predictions. When we draw permanent lines, we paint ourselves into a corner, and that's what we're trying to avoid here with this plan. So our plan would include buffer zones, and I'll show the map here in a moment. I know a lot of people want to see that. But buffer zones that sit between two schools near current district boundaries. We overlaid them over current district boundaries. Poor neighborhoods are not in buffer zones. So to Isabel's point that people in town really like the idea of a neighborhood school. Well, by definition, a neighborhood school serves the neighborhood in its general vicinity. So we felt strongly that if your school, if you physically reside in the same neighborhood that your school physically resides in, you shouldn't be in a buffer zone. Now we also have some distance considerations as well. So we'll talk about that too. Upon registration, residents in a buffer zone state a preference for one of the two schools whose buffer zone they reside in. Lottery or superintendent choice are used to fill schools based on capacity. Both of the lottery or superintendent choice are used throughout the region in different school districts. And it's less drastic than full school choice. One concern I've heard is when you have full school choice, you have 5 children in one street going to 5 different schools. In this case, you're really limiting that as much as you can to 2 schools. Some of the other benefits, in addition to this really helping reduce student overcrowding on an annual basis, are that no students would go to schools more than 1.9 miles from their home in our plan. So there isn't any busing, there's no cost to that. And again to Isabel's point, you won't have people living 2 miles away, really far away, going to a different school. The lottery allows parents to state a school preference. And I don't know how much I can really focus on this and get the point across, but we know that Morocco is going to be quite overcrowded based on the new projections that came out, and Ambrose to a lesser extent. If permanent lines are drawn to move those kids out, they are permanently out of Morocco. In this scenario, you still have a chance to be in Morocco. And as enrollment figures settle down, or as projections potentially don't play out as we thought they would, the school you choose as your #1 school, if that school has capacity, you get in, period. So that's something that we really liked about the buffer zone approach. It's also low cost, it's low tech, it's low overhead. I'll talk a little bit about the process in a moment. And it allows us to avoid redistricting for many years. So the process, these dates here, again, just proposed dates, but the idea is that students in buffer zones would get a tour of the 2 schools to get a feel for those schools. We're talking entering kindergartners and transfer students. You would have early school registration for those in non-buffer zones so that you fill the school first with those students. Then you see what capacity you have left for those buffer zones. That's when you're able to do the lottery. So after that, you have the kindergarten and new student transfer registration March. By April, students already know where they're going to school. So you have the spring and summer for them to get acquainted with their classmates, have events, things like that. Similar to what we do now with our entering kindergartners. Those who don't meet registration deadlines are placed in the school with capacity between those 2 buffer zones if they live in a buffer zone. If both schools have capacity, again, they get their first choice. And just going into a little more detail on that low cost, low overhead, and equitable. When we talk about school tours for families, that's something the PTO can help out with, PTO volunteers at schools. PTO could also help man registration desks. I came from a school district in another state where our PTO ran registration desks on kindergarten roundup day, as they called it. It was Texas, they call things roundup there. Public lottery, parents are welcome to attend the lottery, and the lottery is as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. So to the point earlier about, isn't that a lot of work? It's not really. It's pretty easy to pull that kind of thing off in an equitable, fair fashion and make it public as well, so people can attend and it's transparent. You know, we had a data point from Acton Schools. Now that's full school choice, and they said that 20% of a registrar's time was spent on full school choice. That's a much more complex model because there are many different schools and everyone's putting a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the ballot for which schools they want. So that's a bigger commitment. Newton's assistant superintendent said that the only cost for them are mailing and correspondence. So it's a very low cost solution that adds such great flexibility. So I have a bigger map that I'll go into, but before I do, really wanted to make sure everyone understands that we did not have data by street or neighborhood to build this map. Because of privacy concerns, the town couldn't give that to us. So please look at this map not as a dictation of what it should be, but it is instead our best foot forward based on guidelines that we discussed and developed. Now, data has to be plugged in, and if data is plugged in, this map would probably change. But the guidelines we used in picking these different areas as buffer zones were that no houses can be more than 1.9 miles from either school that their buffer zone resides in. All zones sit on current district lines. Again, that gives that opportunity for, as enrollment settles down, or if there's capacity, you continue to go to your school, your kindergartners, et cetera. And core neighborhoods are not in buffer zones. Now, what is a core neighborhood? And this could probably be debated all night. We took one stab at it. We think there's different ways to do it. You could do it by mileage. You could do a small core neighborhood of 0.4 miles. Just put a circle over each school and say that area won't have buffer zones. When we looked at Newton's and Brookline's and Arlington's, they absolutely protected their core neighborhoods. Buffer zones were, I don't want to say on the outskirts, but buffer zones were not right on top of a school's neighborhood that it physically resided in. Our core neighborhoods here are defined by major high traffic streets or other natural or man-made things that, what's the word? Lost my train of thought. Things that keep people from easily getting that school or walking to that school or other things like that. So why don't I go to the next slide so you can see. For example, let's talk about Morocco here. So you see that we have buffer zones C, B, and D. Again, best guess is with no data. C and B, we looked at distance, so we were careful not to go past that 1.9 mile distance, but we know Morocco has to lose students if we are to use the map approach. We also protected the area that we believe we defined as Morocco's core neighborhood. So that's bounded by Cross Street, Washington, Swanton, and the railroad tracks. Those students would stay outside of a buffer zone. If you look at E and F, those are Lincoln-Ambrose buffer zones. One inspiration for our buffer zones were also some of the maps that were built by the RAC in April. So we looked at some of those maps and said, well, how did they make these decisions? And again, the data has changed, the projections are different, but where does it make sense to draw some of these lines? So E and F are buffer zones for Lincoln and Ambrose. And then G is a buffer zone for Ambrose to VO. And in that case, the core neighborhood defined for Ambrose that is not in a buffer zone is Cambridge, Church, Wildwood, and Westland. Those are the 4 streets with yellow lines that Ambrose physically resides in. And again, G was very much inspired by Model J, if you recall, models that the RAC built. One other thing I want to point out about this map is that a permanent line map that would truly address the overcrowding issues would very likely shift some of these neighborhoods that we have in buffer zones permanently out of their current schools, at least for the next 5 years until we redistrict again. As enrollment settles down in the future, potentially as we renovate Morocco or Lynch in the future, which I know were in previous master plans, students will likely get their first choice, will have more space, and will be able to react in more real time to enrollment numbers and changes. Our suggested next steps with this map, obviously the first step is to plug in that data that we don't have to help assess the feasibility of these buffer zones. Are they big enough? Are they too big? Are there too many? Are there not enough? We think that this should be a transparent process. With unbiased participants. Maybe that's the RAC taking that. Maybe it's a town employee who has that data. But we feel like that's something we would pass on to someone unbiased to take a look at and keep in mind the guidelines we've set out or that they add to that list and build around. Just in closing, ultimately, and I think everyone, the reason we've all worked on these so hard, so many hours, and appreciate everyone's attention is that we all believe we need more flexibility than a permanent lines map provides. Our demographics are changing, and they're changing rapidly. We heard in some of the past open forums a statement over and over. I remember hearing this in April, and it was, children are resilient. I think it's a gross generalization. The truth is some children are resilient and some aren't. Our teachers understand this, and they don't approach our children with a cookie-cutter attitude. I don't think this process should either. We shouldn't take it lightly. If we're going to ask our youngest citizens to buck up and take one for the town, we should ensure that the way we do it actually solves the problem at hand. The data must be there, and it must be clear. We don't want to overcrowd again in a few short years. It's not fair to our families, our students, our teachers, or our administrators. A permanent line map has not served us well in the past in regards to overcrowding. We need to seriously consider an approach that truly addresses the issue on any given year. And in speaking to the school committee and the RAC, as our leaders in this journey, you all have the opportunity to get us off this hamster wheel of repetitive redistricting that we've historically experienced, and truly address overcrowding now and over the long term. We ask that you have the courage as our leaders to make the right decision for us all. Thank you.
Well done. Okay, so questions, if you could come to the microphones, and again, identify yourself and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Xiaoyun, who lives on Washington Street. I'm a Lincoln mom. I have two questions. One is that you talked about not all children are resilient, and then this imposes, you're trying to minimize changes in the long term. I appreciate that, but I think that in that plan, it asks the buffer zone children to be extra resilient because their future is not certain within their whole school time.
So one thing I failed to point out in this plan was I was talking specifically about entering kindergarten and transfer students. Siblings are absolutely considered priority enrollees. So if your child is, if you're in a buffer zone and you have a third grader and you have a kindergartner coming in, they're a priority enrollee. That's one thing. And I guess the other is we didn't address grandfathering. So students who are already in school now, how do we address that? Do we grandfather or don't we? We don't have the data to feel confident to say we grandfather this many or that many students. If we grandfather, then, which is what Arlington did, then you're not asking students to be resilient and switch to a new school.
Those are for the students who are already in school. Mm-hmm. But for the coming students who will be living in those buffer zones, they will need to be faced that they will either go to school 1 or school 2 in the rest of their school year unless they move out of the buffer zone. That's right?
I'm not sure I understand. They only get put in a school once and they stay in that school.
They stay in that school.
That's exactly
okay.
right. I'm sorry
that's
that
better.
I didn't.
That's
oh
better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't clarify that.
Because I think one of the major concern is that people want to settle in one school and don't want to move.
And that's why siblings are included. Yeah, and so really the only transition is if students aren't grandfathered. And then you have to do that lottery process the first year. Okay. And after that, it's just a rolling administrative process. Just as you register kindergartners now, you just add that one extra step of lottery.
Okay. The second concern I have is that the overcrowding issue. I think I can see this plan work, and any buffer zone could work for a couple years. But then I feel like the current overcrowding issue is because people moving into the schools that they desire. Mm-hmm. And I worry that in a couple years you'll have to redraw your buffer zone line.
Mm-hmm. And I think the point there is that we have to draw the buffer zones in a smart way that is that allows them to be big enough that we address that. Now, we were conservative in our map because we don't have numbers. So we need to address that, or we need to say, do we concede that we need buffer zones to be more than 1.9 miles away to really address that issue if we're not able to? Because if that's a showstopper for a buffer zone plan, it should absolutely be a showstopper for a permanent line plan as well. Because if it doesn't work there, we're back to the drawing board 2 years from now with a year-long process, divisiveness, people unfriending each other on Facebook, things like that we don't want to keep happening. It's a small town. We should, love each other. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gretchen Centrelli. I live at 95 High Street. I know some of the authors of this proposal well, and I have the utmost respect for all of you. You're my fellow Ambrose moms and dads. The questions I have I guess, are regarding the two definitions that you sort of outline in your presentation. The first one is the concept of core neighborhood. I guess I'm just trying to understand the benefit of going through that process as it pertains to redistricting. In other words, we're having enough difficulty drawing clear lines. Now we're asking the town to say, okay, let's really sit down here, let's define 5 core neighborhoods. And what would that accomplish? That would accomplish essentially assigning a neighborhood to a school, which kind of makes it feel a little bit exclusive. And I thought that was also addressed by the RAC, that really no neighborhood belongs to, any school. And so I guess where I'm going with this is, once the town has gone through that process, and that could take 6 months, hearing proposals about what constitutes a core neighborhood. Once we have that, don't all we have here is a group of people who are exempt from the redistricting process?
I think that's a great question, and I think one thing that we're finding is, as you look at this map, we had a hard time putting this together. In fact, the further you live from your school, in the current idea of let's not protect core neighborhoods, the more exempt you are. So if I live on the boundaries of our town, and I am 2 miles away from every school but one, I am a protected, exempt. My family's exempt from redistricting. If I chose to move right next to a school, I'm fair game. And so we felt like this was a common sense approach of, look, we're not trying to say everything here is untouchable, and you guys who live out far away are on your own. We really tried to say, let's look at distance, let's think about safety. And again, it could be that you draw a circle that's 0.4 miles and you just go, you know what, it makes sense. Under the definition of a neighborhood school, it is a school that serves the neighborhood it resides in, and it seems nonsensical to say,
but
those guys
how
are
does
fair
it
game.
serve it? I mean, that's the part I'm trying to understand. How do the people living close? I mean, I live a quarter of a mile from Ambrose,
Right.
but I don't think it's any more my school than it is anybody that lives a mile and a half. And I don't think that I volunteer more or support the school more. I'm just the only thing I'm saying is I just worry that we're adding a level of complexity to the process where we're asking the town to say, okay, let's sit down and come up with a process and parameters for exempting people, from being redistricted. And I'm just saying, I think it's a town-wide problem.
And I think it's something that needs to be discussed. I don't think it could take months. I think we brought up a definition that we feel like is very quantitative. The other one that I already brought up, the 0.4 miles, is very quantitative. And again, if we're saying everybody's fair game, let's make everybody fair game. At this point, not everybody's fair game. And if I have to drive through one district to another by sheer geography, I'm protected. And that doesn't feel right either. So, and back to the question about neighborhood schools, there's a lot of data out there as to schools serving the neighborhoods within which there's a proximity, and there's quantitative data on the quality of those schools. And I think this town was built on neighborhood schools, and I think that's part of why these schools are great. It doesn't mean that somebody who lives further away doesn't contribute, but the spirit of the school, the community of the school, is based on the fact that these are neighborhood schools. And what is a neighborhood school if it doesn't serve the neighborhood it sits in? Is it a gerrymandered district that stretches over here?
Okay, I guess I was just also bringing that up in response to the RAC saying that, in their May report that we are no longer neighborhood schools. I mean, we can, I guess, debate that back and forth. I guess the next thought I had was with regard to the buffer zones. My only concern here is, and I guess in the context that we have now core neighborhoods who are exempt from being considered in the redistricting process, now we have a bunch of people who are in the buffer zones who are always shouldering the burden of being, shouldering that burden of redistricting. In other words, it seems to provide flexibility and stability for everybody outside the buffer zones. But I guess I'm just trying to understand, and maybe I just haven't done enough studying on the buffer zone concept, but what I'm trying to reconcile in my mind is if in 3 years we have, we've moved a bunch of people in year one, and in 3 years we need to make some adjustments again, it would seem we'd have to, do we just go back to those buffer zones? Are they the ones that are perpetually responsible for shouldering that town-wide problem?
So first of all, it's a rolling process, just like the kindergarten plan, in that as kindergartners come in, they're placed where there's capacity so that nobody's overcrowded, nobody loses their music room or art room, so there's that equity gain. As far as shouldering the responsibility, I guess the question is what is the definition of that? We're not asking people to change schools in midstream, right? So we're saying you start at a school and you stay at that school, and now that we won't have any more redistricting, you don't have to worry that when your son's in 3rd grade, he's suddenly going to get moved again because permanent lines have to be redrawn, or his classroom has to move into the old music room or the teacher's lounge, because so just like any other plan, there's trade-offs. But again, with permanent lines, I think we certainly have I think the guidelines need to be clear. Is it more important that people who live in the neighborhood a school physically resides in go there, or is it more important that people don't drive down Cambridge Street who live further out because that's technically not their school district? Which of those is more important and why? And there's not a lot of clarity to that. And when we're favoring people who live further out and saying they're automatically going to be in that school because they just live too far from these other schools, it really ties everyone's hands. It tied our hands building this map. Knowing that Morocco is going to be so overcrowded, yet VO is where we're going to have capacity. That's hard on those families. And I, for one, take that very seriously, and I don't want to see any families having to go through the change of school in midstream again. So that's the best I can answer that.
Can I ask that you come back at the end, if you don't mind? I think this is a great discussion. It highlights the difficulty, the complexity, but if we could, let's get the additional questions, and then we'll wrap up with some statements and maybe some additional questions. Please, if you could identify yourself and your address.
My name is Kimberly Hall. I have 2 children. One is in 1st grade now. The other one will soon hopefully go to a school we're happy with, which we're very happy where we are. So this is a ton of work, so thank you for all of it. I just feel like my concern is this is more of the same. It's almost like Russian roulette, or shifting and shifting and shifting. And we're Winchester. We're the Winchester community. Let's do something progressive for a higher educational goal. This is like the MAP approach to me is like adding a new lane to the highway to solve a transportation issue. This is yesterday. What can we do that's beyond the shuffling of the map that is causing everyone pain and will continue to cause everyone pain? What can we do? Something like the advanced learning. How can we work and refine a plan like that instead of just shuffling the problem in terms of time and geography?
And I think that's a great statement. And like I said, I'm a pragmatist at heart. We put together a plan that we felt within the time restraints of moving students to VO was the easiest to pull off while still gaining flexibility over the long term. However, I would be thrilled if one of these other plans became our plan, whether it's ALO, kindergarten, et cetera. Anything that gets us off that hamster wheel and does it well, we're all for that.
Other questions and comments for buffer zone number 1? You can come later. Quick question, sure.
Hi, my name is Dana Diamond. I just wanted to I do appreciate the innovative thinking, but I'm feeling like with this one that those buffer zones, we heard so loud and clear last spring, don't divide our neighborhood, and I feel like those buffer zones are really getting the brunt of that, and we're gonna have kids, I think I see my neighborhood as a buffer zone again, and I still see that 3-school problem there, that, you know, all the brown areas that are deemed as buffer zones, those kids are gonna be going to different schools than their next door neighbors, and it is just sort of shifting the problem to the buffer zones and then the permanent lines, and I think the buffer zones over time would have to get changed as well, so maybe they're not so permanent.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think the issue again is permanent lines are breaking up neighborhoods too. If we look at some of the plans that were built, so
So if we go with a map, we're going to break up neighborhoods, whether it's a buffer zone map or it's permanent lines. The difference is, as enrollment settles down, you're able to go to the school of your choice. You can commiserate with your neighbors and put one for the same school, and if there's room, you will all get in. So that's one benefit. The others, we're not doing this again in a few short years. So if we're going to go with a map, it seems more of a common sense approach to go with a map that's flexible, and that's really kind of where we were coming from.
Great. Next question.
Hi, I'm Mike Zhang, and live in 46 Winford Way. I just don't like the idea of decide our kids' school by lottery, because we all live in Winchester. I think that's not a good idea to determine our kids' school by picking the lottery.
Yeah, so we looked at how some other schools, school districts did it, and some do lottery, and some do superintendent choice. So on an annual basis, the superintendent says, buffer zone B all goes to this school or that school based on projections. And we felt, we proposed both, saying those are two different options if we explore this. Lottery allows you some influence over which you are able to state your preference and have a better chance at getting into the one you like.
Yeah, but if I have a conversation with my daughter, say, next year, which school your sister is going to attend, I don't have an answer. Just say by lottery.
So siblings get priority enrollment, and that's standard for all buffer zone implementations around the region. Siblings get priority enrollment, so your second daughter would get into the school your first daughter's in.
Yeah, I can understand that, but when I sell my house, and how can I start a conversation with the buyer? Which school your kid's going to attend to? By lottery.
So looking at, again, Newton and Brookline, from a real estate standpoint, we didn't see a huge difference in real estate values for buffer zone and non-buffer zone. We didn't see that. So again, this is something that's been proven out in other, again, high-performing school districts in the area, and that's where we're seeing the proof of where it works and how it works.
Yeah, but that will impact people living in the buffer zone. If the bottle house several years ago was high value, now they're in the buffer zone.
And as it would with permanent lines. As it would with permanent lines.
Thank you. This will be the last question.
Okay.
More of a comment. My name is Ron Clark, Oak Street. I'm a Precinct 2 town meeting member. I just want to speak to a couple of comments relative to this plan. The lottery may be a question mark for some people, but perhaps no more of a lottery when someone would buy a house, let's say, on Oak Street, thinking they were going to Lincoln School, and then the line gets redrawn, and they're going to Lynch. And that's quite a lottery to go through, too. So at least in a buffer zone, you know the two options, not a surprise third option, in my perspective.
Comments?
However, another thing that I like about the possibility of a buffer zone, and I'm open to any of these plans as well. For example, in the Oak Street neighborhood, Swanton, Oak, under Plan Z, we were close to Morocco. We live close to Morocco. We live close to Lincoln. The Plan Z sent a neighborhood to Lynch. I think most of my neighbors would have been happy to be in a buffer zone, knowing that what their two options might be, and still they might end up in their first choice anyway. So I think, nothing's perfect, but this one is better than Z in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What do you mean? Yeah, you did get about next time. Next time. Race 4.
I have another buffer zone plan. Did everyone get all their negative questions out of the way in the last one? Well, I gotta be honest, I'm not that used to speaking in front of a large crowd, so I'll do the best I can. And I'm gonna skip on some of the things that the last presenter already talked about, so I won't waste too much of your time. The challenge we have ahead of us basically is the town-wide growth exceeding projections, unpredictable school growth, and specialty space that we'd like to get back from each school that doesn't have it. The elements of an ideal model or a buffering zone in my plan, basically, it just adapts to the school's specific growth and contractions, ensures equity and opportunity at each school, minimizes the need for enrollment projections, and minimizes the impact of redistricting in the first year. A buffer zone model that we may create, basically all new students and students to the new town that are new, we placed in areas to the closest schools to their homes. In the late spring before the upcoming school year, the superintendent places all these new students in either of the closest schools to their home, which I think is great. Children with siblings already in the elementary schools will be grandfathered. And children with IEPs and other special circumstances can stay in the particular school they're in right now. We wouldn't move them. Selections of buffer zones. In my proposal, I have 6 buffer zones. Again, they're flexible. If we have to change it to make it work, that's fine. But they have to be located between 2 schools so neighborhoods can remain intact as possible. Buffer zone areas chosen to ensure that anyone in those zones will definitely be less than 2 miles, so there's no busing costs associated with this plan at all. And zones will be chosen to minimize the number of major streets to be crossed, supporting the safety of our children. The timetable I created, again, we've created it. You can see it there. There's a certain date to finalize the border zones and create documents and protocols. November 12th to March 13th, we can publicize the model to the community, real estate agencies, and so on, and contact the families in the new border zones. In April, all families in the border zones submit their forms with their household size and school preferences, and we can rank the households and assign schools. In June, families will be notified of the new school, and any new families coming into the community after that will be informed of their new school. Again, this is a sample border map that we created. I want to let everyone know that I put myself into a border zone in number 3, and the last presenter didn't. So I like her plan better, for the record. I thought it was only fair because I believed in that, and fairness is important to all of us. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. What about grandfathering? It's really balancing the need for equity with disruption to the community. In a couple of slides I'm going to show you in a minute, my projections basically for border zones comprise of 20% of the Winchester homes. Like the border zones make up approximately 20% of Winchester homes. New kindergarten, if you see that term, basically it's kindergarten children without older siblings, and that's approximately 45% of our kindergarten classes. And I factored in 4 children that move out of school each year, and that allow us to make those seats available for border zone redistricting. This is basically the situation we're in now. We have max capacities for each school, projected enrollments for each school, and the differences that we're facing. These are some examples of grandfathering. I'm going to use Ambrose, not for any reason, because that's the example that I finished. In Ambrose, basically, we see the number of students, the kindergarten students expected at Ambrose in 2013 and 14, 78. The next slide basically is if we did not grandfather new kindergarten students, we'd be able to move 11 students out of that school. Same for all kindergarten students. If we did them, that's the number we'd get. All kindergarten students and first graders, that's the number we'd get, and so on. It would be up to the superintendent to decide how aggressively he wanted to pursue those numbers. He could choose any one of them. We could take it slow year by year to reach our goals, or we could do it all at once. The flexibility in this program is outstanding, and that would be up to the superintendent to decide. But I just wanted to give an idea of some options, and I could go over the numbers with him or anyone, how I got them and so on. Goals for class sizes. Buffer zones allow control over class sizes, and that is how children are distributed to their home schools. New children are assigned based on the grade level of availability. Program equity. All border zone families have the same opportunity to be moved. Specialty space. Only 3 schools have lost of specialty space. We still have specialty space that we haven't gone back at Ambrose, Lincoln, and Morocco. I really think it's important. We have an opportunity to get those spaces back. We should do that. Again, adequacy of specialty space. This model can meet that goal. Classroom targets can be met the first year if desired, but we can stretch it over 2nd, 3rd, 4 years, whatever the superintendent or the school committee decides. We have that flexibility to do that. Performance, additional costs. I met with several superintendents and assistant superintendents, and they all assure me that there isn't really any significant cost at all. That's a huge plus. There'll be some additional administrative time in the first year to execute the model, and afterwards the model can be done with current staffing. And again, way less than 2,000, but I put 2,000 to be a little bit aggressive, but there's no significant cost associated with this at all. Did I get too excited there? I've never heard that before. Considerations, grandfathering. We can decide what students we want to grandfather, depending on how many students we want to move or not move. It's totally flexible. I would like to grandfather as many students in their current schools as possible. To move students out of their current schools now, that they've been there for 2 or 3 years, I just think that's awful. And we need to try to avoid that any possible way we can. Distance. Some children may have to walk longer, but they won't be needing busing because it'll be definitely less than 2 miles. Safety, we'll have to do a full evaluation afterwards based on the border zones after we decide what the zones are. Sustainability, this would be the last redistricting I believe Winchester would ever have. Impact on families, there'd be no impact on families currently enrolled, and new families coming in would have impact, but they're not in the system already, so I think that'd be minimal. Advantages to this model, it doesn't rely on projections at all, but on actual enrollment projections at the school. It's flexible, it can meet the town's needs in the first year or the 4th year or the 2nd year, whatever the superintendent decides. It's minimal cost, first year only. Ensures equity and opportunity system-wide on both short and long term. It preserves neighborhoods and makes safety and walkability priorities. A couple quick points again that I'd just like to make is this plan, some may say, has uncertainty. But I believe uncertainty is just simply change. It's a change. It's changed the way we do things now. People get scared with change. The only person who loves change is a baby with a dirty diaper. That was my wife. Newton, Brookline, Arlington, all realized uncertainty in 2 or 3 years of having some schools back to overcapacity or undercapacity was not worth the certainty of all schools being educationally equal for potentially decades to come. A potential 16-to-1 student ratio at one school is not educationally equitable to a school with a ratio of 23-to-1. That's a fact. The uncertainty of overcrowded schools again in 2 or 3 years is much worse for children in our school system than the uncertainty for a few weeks for a few new families not to know which school within a mile of their home they're going to. Just a few years ago, we tried redrawing lines. And where did it get us? Well, I know it got me here. It didn't work. It's not sustainable. It may work for the first year or two, but if we have an influx of students in a certain precinct, there's nothing we can do. They have to go to that school, and it could cause overcrowding. It will cause overcrowding again. We have no flexibility at all. And last but not least, to quote George Santayana, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Thank you for the consideration of my plan. And since we have no questions, I will.
Why don't you hang out just in, hang out just in case.
You do that, not
Hang out, there might be a comment or question. If you could come to the microphones, please.
Hi, my name is Devi. I'm from Charles Road. I just had a quick question to both the buffer zone people.
Sure.
Are you guys talking about the new students and the kindergarten students only? Are you talking about kids who are already going to school in different grades?
My ideal goal would be to do that, but that's not up to me. That'll be up to the superintendent. But that would be my ideal goal, to lessen.
Because if that's not the case, then it's another redistricting plan. It's just that different borders, different areas.
I'm sorry. I said that would be my goal.
I totally understand where you're coming from, but I'm just saying that the only difference is, again, it's put together like there's a kindergarten plan, there's a buffer zone plan. It's like how you're going to monitor. If that's what it is, then we can just do a kindergarten plan, because all the kids who are going to new kindergarten are, going to a new school, and we can just have a kindergarten plan. Why do we need a buffer zone plan? And again, differentiate people or areas or zones and issues and lotteries. Instead, any new kindergarten student can be given that option of whatever school they want to go, and then you can decide on, like somebody in the past told about a kindergarten plan. It all kind of literally boils down to that. Am I right?
I'm not going to say you're right. I really didn't understand you actually halfway through.
All right.
But I think we're all here. All plans have a lot of positives, and some plans have negatives. I think we're all here because redrawing lines doesn't work, and we're trying to find something that does work. And together I know we can, but that's why I think we all have separate plans and positives and strengths for each plan. In the egregiously flawed Plan Z that was postponed slightly, I live between two schools that are 0.5 miles from my home, and I was going to be sent over 2 miles away. There's got to be something better than that. I think that's why we're all here.
My comment was just that you can just link her plan with your plan, with the kindergarten plan. Ultimately, it's the kindergarten plan. It's just that you guys want the kindergarten plan to work for a certain buffer zone.
I'm sorry, did you do the kindergarten plan?
Pardon me?
Did you do the kindergarten plan?
I did not do any
I'm
plans.
sorry.
I think.
All right, please.
I think we agreed.
I'm going to ask that we follow the rules of order. Ask a question, make a comment, and then sit down, and you can answer the questions, and then we'll go to the next question, please.
Tom, I'm Mike Galvin, Nelson Street.
Hi,
I think
Mike.
the difference between the kindergarten plan and the buffer zone plan is, in the kindergarten plan, the kindergartners go back to their home district. In the buffer zone plans, the children would stay for their entire elementary school career.
Thanks, Mike.
Hello. My name is
Hi.
Brian Vernalia. I live at 19 Sargent Road. I'm the father of 2 at Lincoln School, also a lifelong resident, class of 1990. I have a brief comment I'd like to read. Last year, the town overwhelmingly voiced its support for neighborhood schools. It was thus with great surprise upon reviewing the alternative proposals that the neighborhood model is now being cast aside. Only the advanced learning proposal could vaguely be described as a neighborhood model, at least for those who chose not to opt into the program. The other 4 proposals tear apart families and neighborhoods, in some cases house by house. Of the proposals most disconcerting are those 2 which advocate buffer zones. Advocates of these plans claim they are sustainable and keep neighborhoods together. The price for that sustainability, however, is a permanent state of uncertainty for those who reside in a buffer zone. Families would be vying for one another for coveted spots at schools. And more than likely, many, if not most in the buffer zone, would need to move anyway. Surely this is the worst of all possibilities. While our family would likely be unaffected by any of the proposals presented tonight here, by virtue of the age of our children, no kindergartners, proximity to school, and proposed buffer zone locations, the measure of a plan cannot be merely whether or not you are affected. We must look at whether the plan is right for Winchester. These are not the right plans. Let us return to a well-supported neighborhood model and reject these very unneighborly plans. If the September enrollment numbers justify it, let's adjust the boundaries as needed in Plan Z or one of the other neighborhood models put forward by the RAC. Not everyone here will be happy, perhaps myself included. And then we should move on to the process of helping our children adjust to their new schools and new friends as they continue their educations, certain to be outstanding in any of the 5 schools. Thank you.
Other questions and comments?
That was an easy question to answer.
Hi, I just a quick comment. I think I've heard a lot about how we don't want to go through the same process of redistricting again, and I'm not a fatalist, but I think we're going to probably anyway, no matter if we do buffer zones or redraw lines. Every empty nest house that I see sold in Winchester goes to a family with 2 or 3 young kids. So the reason we're going through this again a couple years later is not because we screwed up the last time we did it. It's because we've had tons of people that want to move to Winchester, and all the capacity's over at VO. It's not that we screwed up how we drew the lines. So I think the only comment I'd make on the buffer plans, I like the idea of a flexibility, but I think it would create similar problems in that in a couple years you're going to have to redraw the buffer zones potentially. And I think it sounds great to say only kindergartners who aren't there today are going to be affected, because then nobody really is going to have a complaint if you have a kid in school today. But the reality is I think a lot of other kids are going to have to be redistricted next year to VO, not just the kindergarten classes. So I like the buffer zone flexibility, but I don't think it's the ultimate solution that we'll never have to redistrict again and only future kindergartners are going to be impacted. So that's just
it's again, all valid points, but if we have to consider a buffer zone with its flexibility not working, drawing lines definitely wouldn't work because there's no flexibility there. And with all those single-family houses getting torn down in this town and 2 and 3 family duplexes going up in every community, we see it everywhere. If we draw lines, we'll have no flexibility. If those enrollments in a certain area go up, we can't do anything. So that's what concerns me. I was just trying to look for a more flexible plan. That was all.
One more comment?
Stacy Kalala, Sargent Road.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi. I agree with what Brian had to say. When I look at the different plans, most recently these last 3 plans, I just see different methodologies for how we're isolating and segregating the plan, the pain. It's shifted back and forth, whether you suffer because your street is broken up, your community is broken up, whether you have a difficult walk, you can't walk to school or you can. The only plan that seems to provide an incentive to move is the alternative learning plan. That actually, to me, makes a lot of sense. And I guess my question is, do we have the money for that? Is that a genuine issue? And what can we do to sort of solve that? Thank you.
I think I can answer that. If you don't mind, Bill.
Tom Tom, please be my guest.
We'll get back to you next week on that question.
Thanks, Tom. Why don't we hold on, just see if there's any more questions, then we'll open up for final comments from each of the plans, if that makes sense. Hi, good evening.
Hi, I'm Bob Burnham, 17 Oak Street. I hadn't planned on asking a question, but I guess it's kind of the question that maybe everybody has is, how do we decide? We've seen a lot of schemes. We're going to see more at the next meeting. Who decides?
I could sort of hopefully help you understand the process that we outlined. So the decision process will be that we're going to, as a committee, discuss this at the next meeting so that we can process the comments that we heard, the questions that we have, and we're going to also ask the administration to verify some questions that we might have about the viability of some of the identified educational components of these things. That will be followed by the RAC will actually make its recommendations from the data that it looked at. We'll have a session to review what those recommendations were and what our concerns or questions are. And that will be followed up with the superintendent's recommendation based on all the information that's been processed. Superintendent has to administer this thing going forward, so he'll have a number of options presented to choose from, and he'll have information from his leadership team, as well as he'll be informed by the questions by yourselves, as well as the questions and comments from our committee. And then what will happen is the school committee itself will have a public hearing. We'll get additional inputs from the public so that we have some feedback as to what your reaction is to what you've heard throughout this process. And then finally, the school committee will actually vote on a plan that they want to see the district implement and manage going forth, such that we have all the students and parents informed with plenty of time to adjust to whatever changes are necessary. I hope that's not a revelation to anyone. We've been sort of beating this drum for a while now, so hopefully everybody's following that piece of it. Okay, thank you very much, Tom.
Thanks.
I'd ask that all the presenters tonight, if you would like to, you could come forward and make a closing comment, and then if the audience has any additional follow-up comments and questions for any of those plans, that would be the time to do it now. Yeah, if you could just make a closing comments to like a minute or two, that way we can get everybody sort of processed and hopefully everybody can get their questions out.
I think we wanted to get back to one important question that just came up about cost. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't clear somewhere, but there really is no significant cost to the ALO program. We're basically talking about similar numbers of classrooms, similar numbers of teachers. There's not a specific cost to it. We're just redefining what we do with our students within the classroom using the current, the Common Core curriculum. So there's really no cost to that additionally.
Thank you for this last closing comment. I think what I'd like to highlight is that an Advanced Learning Opportunities program is really the only plan that offers parents a choice. It's flexible, it gives you a choice, and it avoids the need for redrawing lines, buffer zones, what have you, both now and in the future.
Just wanted to address a question that was asked before the gentleman was here. I think he might have left, but he was saying how would the numbers work in subsequent years, and I just failed to mention that we also ran the same numbers for 2 additional years. Just for the sake of brevity, I didn't include them in the presentation today. However, they are in the report. So I urge you all to check out the report. It's on the Redistricting website. There's a link to the model, and there are detailed numbers for 2 more years. And I can tell you briefly that the numbers work for year 2014 and 2015. We could do this certainly for other years as well. It's just we wanted to prove to ourselves and to everybody that this works. The flexible KG plan works. Just wanted to mention that.
And I just wanted to say that in answers to people concerned about moving kindergartners, I lived it. I was in I was in one kindergarten, and the next year I was in a different school in first grade. Not that you want your children to end up like me, but also I have a 3-year-old who would be impacted by our plan as well.
Thank you. Great. That's it. Open enrollment. Okay. The buffer zone number 1.
Tom, do you want to come up and do this as well? Because our plans are so similar in nature and goals. You know, we're trying to, with buffer zones, work on an incremental approach. It's very complementary to the advanced learning approach. It's very complementary to the kindergarten flex approach. It can help those models work better. So it's not you have to pick one or another. We do think that it's a better plan than drawing permanent lines because it gives you some flexibility beyond just increasing class sizes or taking away music rooms and art rooms. It gives you a little bit more flexibility there. It's not a perfect plan. I don't think any of the plans we've heard today are perfect plans. Tom?
No, I just want to add that every plan affects someone differently. So not everyone's going to support any plan unless it doesn't affect you at all, then you probably don't even care. That's why the whole process is difficult. If I bring up a buffer zone and put someone in it, they're not happy. If my friend brings up a buffer zone and someone else is in it, they won't be happy. Kindergarten, someone has a kindergarten and they won't be happy. So we're just trying to all brainstorm to find the best solution that's flexible and sustainable for the town for hopefully years to come. That's it.
Thank you. So, does anyone have a question or comment? Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the presenters. Very thoughtful, very well presented. Really appreciate your inputs.
Chris, I think open enrollment needs to have closing remarks.
I'm sorry.
Open enrollment.
Yep. Oh, I asked, and he said no comment.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But we have a question and a comment.
I guess a couple of comments. I want to thank all the presenters for the time and the thought they've put in, and also the people on the committees who've spent a lot of time and effort, and unpaid time, I might add. So thank you very much. It's all for our benefit. Pamela Court on Arlington Street. I'm unlikely to be affected by a buffer zone or a redistricting, but there were a couple of comments I wanted to make. One was open enrollment, as I understand in Acton, is based on inequality between the schools. My understanding is that each elementary school has something a little bit different to offer, and parents aren't choosing based on how new the building is, but more whether their kids are more interested in math and science or arts and music. So that there's a huge difference between open enrollment in Acton and how it would be able to be implemented here in Winchester. And I think the Acton model is a wonderful one. I just don't know if that's something that would be feasible in Winchester, given budget constraints. The ALO one, I think, is a very exciting one. I just wanted to comment that I think Massachusetts, out of all of the states in the U.S., has one of the worst set of laws to support children who need advanced learning, who need to be able to go at their own pace, who need to be in gifted programs. My brother in Florida, whose schools, Massachusetts has great schools, some of the best schools in the country, and yet my brother in Florida, who's, has poorer schools, is able to send his kids to gifted schools. I think it's an exciting opportunity for Winchester to explore, and I just wonder what kind of administrative buy-in there would be on that, because even though there may not seem to be upfront costs, there's planning costs, there's training costs, there's some other hidden costs that may be associated with it, and I wonder whether or not there would be administrative buy-in, but I thank you all.
Thank you. Good comment.
Hi, I'll be brief. I'm Stephen DeCanto. I live at Blossom Hill Road. I'd like to comment that I really find it very appealing to see that what started out as a small group of individuals or families concerned about what might happened when there was redistricting to their home or their families has really evolved into a well thought out and interesting proposals that would be to the benefit of the whole community. And that's nice to see the town folks coming together that want to take the time and interest to put plans together that are both unique or perhaps plausible or that are inevitable. I suppose, though, one of the things I wondered was why the school committee was not allowing the RAC to consider these proposals in the same light as the proposals that they have been engaged in all along, and where or how will the same consideration with that data be used to look at these plans to see how these plans would work. Because it does seem like we're on a slow train to just redrawing lines, and if that's the case, we would probably be back here in 4 or 5 years again, as we have been in the past 20 years, just drawing lines without having any more permanent or flexible solutions. So I guess I'd ask that rather than the school committee or the RAC or the town folks take a look at any of these plans and look at worst case scenarios or the what if possibilities, perhaps try to take a look at them in their best light and say, how do these plans, these alternatives to drawing lines, improve what we've been doing in the past, and what we think we'll do now, can't we do this a little bit better? So I'd hope that the school committee and the superintendent would take these alternative plans as seriously as the work that has been done by the RAP to date, and perhaps incorporate these in. And furthermore, if we are on that slow train to just simply redrawing lines, I think the buffer zone plans do give us a little bit more flexibility, and at the same time will give us some breathing room to perhaps incorporate some of these other plans that have been put on the table tonight into our school systems, and thereby our students will have the benefit of the plans that have been introduced tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Shelley Walsh. I live on Wildwood Street. One thing I would like to ask each of the alternative plans to consider, because I don't see that it was addressed all that much, is the equity between the schools. As someone just brought up about school choice, enacting each school has something different to offer, and I'd hate to see some of our schools left behind and others surge forward with school choice. Same with the AOL plan. I would like you to address how, say, a student at Lynch or any one of the schools could get involved in the VO program if, their family didn't have the wherewithal to get them back and forth to VO. If they were one of the students who hops on the bus to the Y every day after school, how could you address those sort of inequities? And furthermore, as to any MAP plan, whether it's the buffer zones or not, how can you address specifically to the Lynch School the fact that the Lynch School is in dire straits right now and trying to improve itself, and in the buffer zones in each one of the plans, one of the targeted areas is one of Lynch School's, I would argue, core neighborhood, but we'll have that fight for another day. And how do these plans address equity between the schools, not just equity of how the redistricting is going to happen? Thanks.
Thank you. Ron, Clark Oak Street. I have a quick question and then a very brief comment. The question is, Mr. Linsky, does the superintendent need to make a single recommendation to the school committee? It seems to me that if there were, let's say, 2 or 3 workable plans and the superintendent had a priority in his vision, it might be better to have that flexibility. It seemed that when the superintendent originally was looking at Plan Z, and then some doubt was cast on Plan Z, everything had to be, not everything, but a lot of things had to be redone. It might be helpful to have a few workable options that the superintendent could recommend. The school committee may not in their infinite wisdom, like Plan A, but B also being workable, the process gets finished. And finally, the school committee and the school administration showed many admirable qualities by being willing to listen and being open-minded and showing humility, and that unleashed a lot of creativity and vision, imagination among a lot of people in the community. And those are wonderful qualities to have in any organization, but especially in a school district. So I encourage you to build on that and be imaginative and take chances based on data, and come up with a visionary plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last question or comment?
I know it's 10 o'clock and I don't want people to wait. I just had one small comment. Just that personally from all the observations today, and all of them are great plans, and thank you everybody for putting this together. But personally, I also felt that the ALO plan was great if we could work it out, if the school committee and other people who are involved can make a little effort to go and explore it above and beyond if your capabilities, if it's possible, because I think that would probably resolve a lot of other redistricting, redrawing, or buffer zone, or any discrimination between geography or people or neighborhood or anything. All those questions will be taken away if we have something totally different from that. So either the ALO or even the kindergarten plan, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to make and emphasize that it really sounds amazing, and if we could really explore a little bit on that, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to thank the audience for your questions and comments. It's very helpful for the committee, and I think that we learned something from each other, and please stay tuned. There'll be additional discussion to follow up on this in the next meeting. I want to remind everybody that the website will have all the plans that were presented tonight, so those are available if you would like to see them again. And also remind you that the website is open for comments, so if you have an additional thought, submit that comment. And for the viewers at home, you could do the same. And so that's it for this evening. I'm sorry. Let's see, at 10:05. It's a quick one.
I just want to say, Chris Centrelli, 95 High Street. Listen to all the plans tonight. I thought people did a lot of good work. I thought they proposed a lot of innovative solutions. But overall, I got to say, all the plans that were presented tonight have problems. Just like the plan that you guys presented back a few months ago have problems. And I just think that everyone should recognize, no matter what's done, there are going to be people that are going to be happy and people that are going to be upset. And I just want to emphasize that the committee on its own, in an unbiased fashion, spent a lot of time and effort coming up with your proposal in May. And nothing that I've heard tonight convinces me that your proposal was wrong or that any proposal here tonight was better. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so again, thank you very much for your comments, and please, if you do have additional follow-up, submit them to the website. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Mr. Chairman, move to adjourn.
So moved. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Good night.